אדוני הוא האלוהים! אדוני הוא האלוהים! אדוני הוא האלוהים!
When I was a very small child, my parents used to take me to cafes where they will meet with their friends. I had no brothers, no sisters. They would tell me, be quiet, we need to talk to our friends. And they will promise me, if you behave yourself while we talk to our friends, you will get ice cream in the end. And they talked to their friends for 77 days and 77 nights non-stop, forever. And poor me, I was sitting there in the cafe and I had to behave myself. So I invented a little game as a boy. And this is my game, this is the game of my life. I would look around me at the strangers and try to imagine who they are. Like a little detective, I'd look at their clothes, I'd look at the shoes. Shoes tell stories, always. Shoes are great storytellers. I would look at the shoes, at the clothes, at the body language. I will try to steal some snatches of the conversations and I will invent the lives for them. This is what turned me into a writer. This and the love of the language. So you can say on me, here is a man who became a writer because he wanted the ice cream in the end. This is 1,000 years before Christ. When Christ was born, this city was 1,000 years old.
So that's a rock mentioned in the Bible?
Yes, many times.
And behind us, the old synagogue?
You can even see camels. You wanted camels, you can see camels in the distance. In the distance.
Yeah, I see
yes.
them. Yeah.
The real landscape into which I was born as a little boy was a room full of books. This was my universe. I did not play very much out in the fields because it was dangerous. I was not allowed to be very much alone in the street because it was dangerous. Riots, violence. My landscape was a little room, smaller than this room, filled with books from ceiling to floor, from floor to ceiling, books in 16 languages. And the library was my original landscape and also my ancestry. There were very few windows. It was dark, and all I could see when I opened my eyes, books in many colors, in many languages, books I could not read, but I could smell. And to this very day, I have this sensual love for the book. I love not only to read a book, but to touch it, to feel it, to smell it with my nose, to leaf through the pages and to touch it with my fingers. As a child, I wanted to grow up and to become a book. Not a writer, but a book. Because I felt I grew up in time and place where personal life was totally insecure. I knew about the millions of Jewish children who died in Europe in the Holocaust. I knew that the same might happen to us in Jerusalem because of the conflicts and the insecurity. I felt as a child that if I could grow to be a book, then at least one copy of me will survive in some faraway library, maybe in Sofia, maybe in some other place. One copy of me will survive. That's why I wanted to become a book, not a man.
This is very true that every one of us is carrying inside himself or herself a child. The child that you have been once. I would say every one of us is pregnant with that child. Wherever we go, we carry the child that we have once been. Now that child received promises that life could not deliver. Childhood is full of promises. Joy and happiness and achievement and success and beauty and satisfaction. Life can never deliver all the promises of childhood. So every one of us, every human being, has this insult of unfulfilled promises. I eat simple, I drink simple, I live simple.
They said that even before your first book, I'm sorry, sir. Your mother committed suicide?
She killed herself when I was 12 and a half. She killed herself for despair, for sense of alienation, for reasons I don't completely understand even now. And obviously when she killed herself, I was very angry with her. For many years I was very angry with her, as if she ran off with a lover. How could she leave behind a very gentle and loving husband like my father and a very wonderful wunderkind like myself, and walk away on us without even leaving us a letter? So I hated her. I wanted to kill her for killing herself. Then I was also very angry with myself. I thought something must be terribly wrong with me if my mother defected and left me like this. Something must be totally wrong with me. There were many years of great anger in all directions. I could only write my tale of love and darkness, my saga, when the anger subsided, and instead of the anger came curiosity, and compassion and empathy and humor. Each time a man and a woman go to bed together, he brings with him his parents, because every one of us is pregnant with the parents, and those parents are also pregnant with their parents. And she brings to the bed her parents and her former lovers and her childhood lovers and everyone she ever experienced and her parents.
And fantasies.
And fantasies, and fantasies, and fantasies. And so, each time a man and a woman go to bed together, it's not lovemaking, it's an orgy.
הכינור הגדול.
Writing a novel is like building the whole range of mountains, the Alps or the Pyrenees, from Lego blocks, little building blocks. It's made not of characters. You mentioned 15 characters, but it's made not of the 15 characters, but of the 100,000 words or 200,000 words, and every word has to fit in. So you work like a little watchmaker with a magnifying glass in the eye and a little pair of tweezers between your fingers, and you move words. Then there are the characters. Yes, you have to be a secret agent. You have to put yourself in the skins, under the skins of many different people, and you have to agree with everyone.
desert is my source of personal silence. Some of it I take with me every morning. I bring it with me to my study. Also a sense of proportion. How small is the human being in the universe? It is very humbling. The desert is a great humbler. It helps you look everything into proportion. It reminds you that your time is not the time of the universe, and your sense of importance is not the importance of the universe, and your sense of priorities are not the priorities of the universe, and your sense of space is not the space of the universe. It reminds you that you are here today and go on tomorrow, that you are episodic. The desert out there is unchanged since times immemorial, since before the beginning of human life, since primeval times, unchanged. The same mountains, the same sands, the same rocks, such as they were there before the creation of humankind, maybe before the creation of animals. A different sense of time, a different sense of proportion.
And what about loneliness, sir? Because
Loneliness.
So much about loneliness.
Well, I write about loneliness because I think loneliness is the basic human condition. You know, John Donne once suggested that every man is an island. Some ideologies make this into a positive thing. Every man is an island fighting with the rest of humanity, competing with the rest of humanity. Other ideologies suggested the opposite. Every man is just a molecule of some bigger continent. This is no good either. For my money, if you ask me, every man is not an island, and every man is not a molecule of the mainland. Every man is a peninsula, half connected to the mainland of culture and family and language and religion and society, half facing the ocean and the elements. This is the way we are, and this is the way we ought to be left, peninsulas. It's enough to spend 5 minutes in the streets in Jerusalem or in Arad or in Tel Aviv to discover once and for all that there is no Jewish race.
No.
Jewish people come in all colors, black and white and brown and yellow, you name it.
Yeah.
And in all physiognomies. There is no such thing as Jewish physiognomy or Jewish race. It's all in the mind. All the racist theories about the Jews are valueless because obviously the Jews are not a race. There are black Jews from Ethiopia. There are very dark Jews from India or from Persia or from Yemen. There are blonde, bright eyes Jews from Eastern Europe. There are Chinese Jews with slanted eyes. So it's not a race, it's a state of mind. Every individual who is mad enough to call himself or herself a Jew is a Jew. Is he a good Jew or a bad Jew is a different question. But if he or she is crazy enough to say, I am Jewish, then he is Jewish. This is all it takes. We don't have a definition. It's not a religion because there are many Jews who are totally a-religious, like myself. I never go to synagogue, I'm totally a-religious. There are Jews who believe in Jesus. There are Jews who believe in anything under the sun, from communism to spiritualism. And you never get two Jews to agree with each other on the question of who is a Jew and what is a Jew. In fact, you never get two Jews to agree with each other on anything. I will tell you more than this. It is very hard to get one Jew to agree with himself or herself because everyone is ambivalent, everyone has a divided mind and soul. This country, this society is a club of arguments. This is not a country, this is not a nation, this is a fiery collection of arguments. Everyone knows better. 7 million citizens, 7 million prime ministers, 7 million prophets, 7 million messiahs. Everyone shouts, no one ever listens. Except for me. I listen sometimes. This is how I make a living, by sometimes listening to other people.
And observing.
But people here shout. They don't listen, they shout. This is not a story from me. This is a wonderful story from the Talmud.
Yeah.
It's about two rabbis who, in their capacities as judges, they have to decree over a certain dispute, something very legalistic. They cannot interpret the Torah in the same way. They have two different interpretations of the religious law. And they argue 7 days and 7 nights. They don't eat, they don't drink, they argue. After 7 days and 7 nights, God has mercy on them. And a voice is heard from above, Rabbi Yehoshua is right, Rabbi Tarfon is wrong, go to sleep. This is not the end of the story. The loser, he turns his eyes upwards and he says, God Almighty, you have given the Torah to human beings, you keep out of the argument. And the voice from heaven is heard again saying, my sons have beaten me, which means touche, you are right. This is a very deep and essential tradition of the Jewish civilization, arguments. Not even God can resolve the argument. It's for human beings. It's a civilization of interpretations, counter-interpretations, reinterpretations, arguments. If you ask me what is the secret of the long duration of this civilization, how could this civilization survive since ancient times, since the beginning of history almost, under impossible circumstances, and in times of persecution and oppression and massacres, and in great dispersions in many countries, from China to Bulgaria to Latin America. How could the Jews survive? The answer is they survive because they argue. They argue all the time. They disagree with one another. This is a very, very strong life-asserting quality. This country is made of such dreams. There were at the same time other dreams. There was a dream of Jews who came here from Central Europe and wanted to create here a replica of Austro-Hungary of Franz Joseph, with red-tiled roofs and peace and quiet between 2 and 4 every afternoon, and people calling each other Herr Doktor, Frau Direktor, and eating Bavaria cream. And behaving like the emperors Austro-Hungary. And there were other people who had the dream, like the founders of Kibbutz Hulda. They had the dream which was socialist but not Marxist, Tolstoyan dreams. They wanted to create not a state, a loose federation of village communities which will combine socialism, religion and anarchism. No government, no central government, small communities which will purify their souls by working hard on the land, sharing everything and being close to nature. Very Tolstoyan dream. When people ask me if I am disappointed with Israel, I say yes, I am disappointed compared to the magnitude of the original dreams, but this is not about the nature of Israel, it's about the nature of dreams. The only way to keep a dream perfect and rosy and intact is never to try to live it out. Well, the founders of the Marxist kibbutzim, they had a secret dream which they never formulated in words, but I can put it in words for them because I know their minds. They secretly dreamt that one day Stalin himself will come for a visit in kibbutz, and they will give Stalin the grand tour. They will show him the cowshed and the chicken poultry and the farm and the communal children's houses, and then they will drag Stalin to the communal dining hall for a long debate on Marxism-Leninism into the night. All night they will argue in Russian with Stalin. And by 4 o'clock in the morning, they knew better. I'm not being ironical. They really knew better. They knew better, not only better than Stalin. They knew better than Marx, because they knew every word of Marx by heart. Marx never knew Marx by heart, but they did. They learned Marx like they learned the Torah. So they hope that all night they will have the discussion with Stalin. 4 o'clock in the morning, Stalin will rise to his feet and say to them in juicy Russian, well, bloody Jews, I have to admit, you did communism here better than we did in Russia, and then die of happiness. That was the dream. If you were born the end of the 19th century or the beginning of the 20th century to a poor family and you were intellectual, you would become a communist or a very left-wing. It was elementary. Elementary, because if you were poor, idealistic and young at that time, you will join the forces of the future. Remember, in those days it was not yet filtered and littered with all the atrocities and crimes. It was the biggest dream of many generations. It was a new religion. So people became communists.
Jews were very much oppressed in Russia.
Because they were oppressed, because it was giving them hope and giving them a big promise to be like everyone else. People became communists 100 years ago for the same reason for which people became Christians in the late days of the Roman Empire. There was a new dream. It gave them a new dream. Early Christianity must have been a bit like this, a huge dream.
Leon Feuchtwanger asked himself in his novel about Josephus Flavius, what kind of a religion is it, made by poor people and women?
Yes. Good point. Good point, yes. Well, I would say every religion contains its own fanatic destructiveness inside it. Every religion, without exception, contains a certain element of fanatic and destructiveness. How strong the element is, that varies, depending on historical circumstances. My grandmother taught me a good lesson about how to live with open-ended situations. When I was a very little kid, this wise woman explained to me in very simple words the difference between Jew and Christian, not Jew and Muslim, but Jew and Christian. And she said to me, you know, my boy, the Christians, they believe that the Messiah have been here and he will come again one day, Jesus. The Jews, we believe that the Messiah have not yet been here. Over this disagreement, my grandmother said, so much bloodshed and anger and persecution. Why, she said, why can't everybody simply wait and see? If the Messiah comes saying, hello, it's nice to see you again, the Jews will have to admit that they were wrong. If the Messiah will come saying, how do you do, I am very pleased to meet you, the whole Christian world will have to apologize to the Jews. Until then, live and let live, said my grandmother. This is the answer to the question of the disputed holy places. Live and let live, and the question can be unresolved until the Messiah comes and tells us which is the right religion and which is the wrong religion. Maybe the Messiah will come and tell us that he is not religious at all. Personally, I believe that if God exists, he is certainly not religious. I think God is not even interested in religion. I will tell you that the fanatic is not someone who kills himself for the cause. The fanatic is someone who looks for a cause for which to kill himself. The fanatic has no taste for life, and no love for life, and no joy in life. He is looking for something for which he can die, something which justifies death. Fanaticism is the religion of death. Life is negative, ugly, corrupt. Death is pure and divine. Now, if this comes with the promise for 72 virgins in heaven, this is a very seductive temptation to some limited, mind-limited, young fanatics.
يا ليل 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 موعود فيها صار بالمدي ولما تلاقت يدها بيدي قلت بدي شكلك بالورد، قالت أنا بالعكس ما بدي. فرشت لها ريش النعام تخوت وبوردتها بهبة نسيم الليل، وجبت لها حبي من الياقوت تلمع بإيدها مثل نجم سهيل. قلت لها يا حاضري وغد عفوك هدايا الحب لك رب سجود العاش بالديباج وسحبت من عمر الزمن ديبا لوني شفاف الحمر غرزت فيهم فستان الرح تحترق من ثلجة الجمر، وقلت البسيهن والشمس حدي فزعان تكوي الورد المندي، قالت فيها الشمس تكوي شمس وعن إذنك فصاطي.
The conflict between Israeli Jew and Palestinian Arab is a tragedy, a clash between right and right. The Palestinians are in Palestine because Palestine is the homeland of the Palestinians. They have no other homeland. The Israelis are in Israel because as a people they have no other homeland either. The Palestinians have nowhere to go. The Israeli Jews have nowhere to go. This is a tragedy in the classical sense of the word. Two different people claiming the same land as their one and only homeland, and both of them are right. I think this tragedy can be resolved in a compromise. Painful compromise. Every compromise is painful by definition. There is no such thing as a happy compromise. It's an oxymoron. Happy compromise. Compromises are made with clenched teeth and with clenched fists. But in the end of the day, the Palestinians are not going anywhere. The Israelis are not going anywhere. They will have to divide the house into two even smaller apartments. You ask me, should Jerusalem remain undivided?
Yeah.
And I'm telling you that Jerusalem is actually divided. It is divided. There are certain neighborhoods where Jews don't go. There are certain other neighborhoods where Arabs don't go. Is this a wonderful situation? No, but this is an existing situation. There is no alternative at this point in time. No alternative. But to divide Jerusalem into two capital cities with spatial arrangements about the disputed holy places. But essentially, East Jerusalem is going to be the capital of Palestine. West Jerusalem is and will remain the capital of Israel. And I can give you one prophecy, one prediction, although I don't like to make prophecies. Yeah. There is too much competition in the prophecy business in this country, so I'm normally very careful not to make prophecies, but I will give you one. One day, there will be an Israeli embassy in Palestine and a Palestinian embassy in Israel. And those two embassies will be walking distance from one another, because the Israeli embassy will be in East Jerusalem and the Palestinian embassy will be in West Jerusalem, and you will only have to walk a few kilometers from one embassy to another. This is not ideal, but this is going to happen. Now the holy places, they don't call for a solution. They call for some modus vivendi, not a solution. The holy places are not urgent. They can remain unresolved until the end of history, as long as everybody can pray. Whose flag should wave over the holy places? The answer is no flag. In 1967, after the spectacular military victory, many people in Israel became drunk with military power and drunk with the victory. Maybe this is human. Immediately after the fear of extinction and destruction, to have such a victory, it's only natural that people become a little bit high, a little bit intoxicated. Now, I am not an historian. I am not an expert on Arab affairs. But I traveled across the West Bank and Gaza immediately after the war, and I could see that we have not liberated those territories. And I wrote an article immediately, an article about the words, about the language. I said, look, don't talk about liberation. We have not liberated those people. They are not Israelis. They don't want to become Israelis. Maybe we were right to fight the war. Maybe we were right to win the war. But don't call it liberation, please. This is not liberation. For those people, this is occupation. And occupation is temporary. And occupation is deadly dangerous for the occupied and for the occupier, both. This was an article I wrote very few weeks after the Six-Day War. It was received with great anger. Everybody was furious with me because I was spoiling the festival.
They called you a traitor.
I was called a traitor. But this is, traitor is an honorary degree. I think every decent human being must sometimes be called traitor by some of the most chauvinistic members of his own people. This is a decoration. I think I would wear it here. I was called a traitor. After all, some of the greatest leaders in the 20th century were called traitors by some of their own people. De Gaulle, when he withdrew from North Africa, was called traitor by many French. Churchill, when he dismantled the British Empire, was called a traitor. Anwar Sadat, when he came to Jerusalem to make peace with Israel, was called a traitor by many Arabs. Menachem Begin, when he gave back Sinai in return for peace, he was called traitor. Yitzhak Rabin and Yasser Arafat were both called traitors by their own people. So this is an honor. If I were the Prime Minister of Israel now, I will pick up the phone and call Abu Mazen. And I will say to Abu Mazen, let me address the Palestinian National Assembly. I want to speak to the Palestinian National Assembly. I will go to Ramallah or to Gaza. In the same way in which Sadat came to speak to the Knesset in Jerusalem, I will go to Ramallah or to Gaza. I will speak to the Palestinian National Assembly and I will say, look, if you want to be a sovereign state in the West Bank and Gaza, if you want your independence and your sovereignty and your liberty and your human dignity, you are going to have it. It's not going to be simple, it's not going to be easy, but you are going to have it. If, on the other hand, you want to deny the same from us Israelis, so that we will have no homeland, you are not going to have it. I will also speak to the Palestinian National Assembly about the suffering of the Palestinians. And I will say that as a Jew, I understand and sympathize the tragedy of hundreds of thousands of Palestinians who live in refugee camps. I will say this is my problem. The whole world will have to help resettling those Palestinian refugees in the state of Palestine, not in Israel, because if those refugees move to Israel, there will be two Palestinian states and no one for the Jewish people. But in the state of Palestine, every last Palestinian refugee will have a home and a job, and I will make it my prime precondition for peace. I will, in short, talk to the Palestinians in such a way that will create a certain emotional momentum. Then I will see if we can take it from there.
عسل هون الحلو هون اللي بدوق هيو الحلو هون عسل 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 هون هيو الحلو هون عسل عسل هون
سكري هون.
برد يا عطشان برد. اللي بدوق عسل. عسل هون الحلو هون اللي بدوق. هيو الحلو هون عسل. عسل عسل. عسل هون.
يا نوبة بعشرة.
The suffering of the other is your problem. The refugee camps of the Palestinians are my problem, not because I'm guilty. I don't think Israel is the only or the prime guilt, but it doesn't matter. They are my problem because as long as hundreds and thousands of Palestinians are rotting in inhuman conditions in those camps, Israel will have no peace and no security. This is why this is my problem. We will have no peace and no security as long as those people don't have dignified human lives. So I can argue from here until eternity whose guilt it is that the refugees are in the camps. It won't help me. This problem needs to be solved. This is urgent. It's more urgent than the question of the holy places or the Mount of Temple. It is more urgent than the question of where exactly to draw the boundaries. It is more urgent than the question of the settlements. It is more urgent than the question of terrorism, because this is the source of terrorism. This fact that so many people are decaying in terrible refugee camps, this is urgent. Every day is suffering, despair, hopelessness, and therefore violence.
وسحبت من عمر الزمن خيطة لون بلون شفافها الحمرا وطرزت فيهن قبة الفستان اللي رح تحترق من تلجة الجمرة وقلت البسيهن والشمس حدي فزعان تكوي الورد المندي قالت ما فيها الشمس تكوي شمس وعن إذنك فصاطي.
The universe is not a just place, but as I told you earlier, there are the great equalizers. Death is a great equalizer. Illness is a great equalizer. Rich and poor and gifted and not gifted and successful and unsuccessful. Death and illness and solitude and suffering and defeat. These are great equalizers. This is the socialism of the universe.
وسحبت من عمر الزمن خيطة لون بلون شفاف هالحمرا وطرزت فيهن قبة الفستان اللي رح تحترق من تلجة الجمرة وقلت البسيهن والشمس حدي فزعان تكوي الورد المندي قالت ما فيها الشمس تكوي شمس وعن إذنك فصاطي
In Sinai and on the Golan, in 2 wars, you were fighting hand-to-hand combat. What kind of an experience is it?
Can I talk about my experience as a soldier on the battlefield? I could talk, but it will not be the true thing. It will be words. It is very difficult to convey the experience of the battlefield to people who have not been on the battlefield, for a very simple reason. The battlefield, first and foremost, is the experience of the nose. It stinks like hell. This you don't see in the cinema. This you don't see on television, even on very, very bold documentaries of fighting. You don't smell this deadly stench of burning rubber and burning metal and burning human flesh and the excrement and the shit and the pee, because people shit and pee in their trousers. You don't convey the smells. And it is extremely difficult in literature, in writing, to convey the stench of the battlefield. If I will ever write about the battlefield, I will write first and foremost about this stench, about this impossible stench.
And probably fear.
And fear. You know, I could see the artillery shells exploding in our midst, and I could sense very clearly that this is my last hour, this is my last minutes. And this feeling accompanied me for days. I'm still alive, but probably not for many more minutes. Certainly not for many more hours. The next night looked like something of another life, not this life. And there was this feeling of despair. What am I going to do that I haven't done? What can I still do that I haven't done? This kind of feeling, again, is something which is very difficult to convey. Maybe someone who is facing the gallop on a capital punishment is experiencing something similar. The knowledge that you are going to die, certainly, you are going to die.
And now, sir, when the end is nearer than the beginning, far behind the horizon, what's worth in your life, sir? What's the most important?
My world is my family, my home, and my work. This is my immediate world. This is where my immediate responsibility lies. In this world, I try to make things as balanced and cheerful and full of joy as I can. This is my responsibility. I wish I could change Iran. I cannot. I wish I could change George Bush. I cannot change George Bush either. There are many things I would like to change, and I strive to change them. But the realm of my immediate responsibility are exactly the 30 fingers of my children and the 40 fingers of my grandchildren, and this house and this garden and this family, and my work. This is what I have, and this is a lot. And every morning, as I take my early morning walk in the desert, I feel huge gratitude for everything I have. I wasn't born with any of those given to me. I was born into an unhappy family. I was born to a father and a mother who gave each other a lot of suffering. I was born into war and destruction. I was born to a family most of which was murdered by the Nazis in Europe. I was born into a state of conflict and clash in Jerusalem. Now what I have, what life had given me, is a treasure. And I take this humbly and gratefully.